I will share my screen.
And because we are a smaller group, but it doesn't have to be too formal. Obviously, we have got some stuff to talk to you about, but let's kind of keep this quite an informal session, really, with the opportunity to chat. And we'll be keeping an eye on the chat panel, so do use that. But as Laura said, if you want to use your microphone, we're happy. Let's have a bit of a conversation. So we'll get going. So yeah, thanks for joining the session today. This is the first of a number of sessions that we're doing. Sorry, for those of you who don't know, I am Aniela Kaczmarczyk. Forgot to say hello. Who am I? Head of Learning here at Good Things Foundation. And I'll just hand over to Laura, because probably a lot of you already know Laura, and we've got to let Laura introduce herself.
I think I've met quite a few of you over the last couple of years. So, but I'm Laura Faulkner, and I work on the learning team at Good Things Foundation. So I'm officially called the Curriculum Development Manager. So I work on a lot of the sort of resources and support packages around our learning offer. And I think probably we're going to have Matt Moxon joining us at some point from the Digital Social Inclusion team. So he might pop up as well during the session.
Well, that's good. There might be a few people. I'm sure it's lunchtime as well, so perhaps people are just getting their lunch and then they're going to join, aren't they, to have a listen in. But yeah, this series. So we're starting this Essential Digital Skills Qualification series, and it is about the quals, but it's also about the wider kind of landscape around essential digital skills in general at the moment. So today we're gonna just revisit what essential digital skills are and why they're important, and probably become more important than ever due to the situation we're in at the moment with COVID and the pandemic. But the other side of it is really to start to think about, well, where we are in terms of the external landscape. So from a policy point of view, what does this mean for you as organisations, and are there opportunities that we can tap into because of the kind of raised awareness of essential digital skills, but also what are the challenges, because the funding landscape's changing quite a lot. And then we're also just going to share a bit more about what's coming up in the rest of the series that kind of links in and complements today's session. One thing I want to do before we do that is I just want to check through the chat panel. Can you let me know who is who is currently funded through our Future Digital Inclusion Fund programme through the Department for Education? If you just let me know through the chat panel if you were either still a part of that programme. Yeah.
It's gone, hasn't it now? Yeah.
It's gone, but yeah, and I think, Paul, yeah, let's be honest, it's gone. And that's part of why we're doing this, really, because like I said, the funding landscape's changed and policy's changed on this. But where does that kind of leave us? Because we know that there's so much need out there still, and particularly where the funding model's going is, are we at risk of leaving people behind? So there's a bit of a mixture. Some of you, actually majority of you previously were funded through it. So I just wanted to get a feel for that, because I think this is about and this isn't just for previously funded centres, but this is about what happens next, what can we do next. So we're going to just, I'm going to go, well, I've done the introduction, so we know who we are and what we're all about. But before we get into the nitty gritty, we've got a very quick little icebreaker. And before we then get into some of what it's all about, the policy, where are we, and that side of it. But before we do it, I'm going to hand over to Laura. So you might find Laura's flicking my slides over. So if it's always that funny thing, isn't it, where you kind of you don't quite, what's coming next, but you don't. But anyway, I think we've said all that, and then we're gonna try something now with an icebreaker. We're going to jump to a completely different screen as well.
Okay, so we wanted to kind of think about how we use essential digital skills ourselves in sort of everyday life. So thinking about our phones, what apps do we use on our phones most often? And so we can kind of all see the answers coming on. I was hoping we could use this Slido tool. So you may or may not have used this before, but if on a different window of your device or possibly on a phone or whatever, if you go to slido.com, it should then ask you for a code that will reveal the question, which app on your phone do you use most often? And you can type in one or several answers and they will appear in a word cloud. And as people type the same answer, the words will get bigger. So I'm going to go to that screen. So I think I need to, did this no problem a second ago. Here we go. Okay, so I think you can all see that now, can't you? So we're already getting one answer in Facebook Messenger. I'll do this myself as well. WhatsApp. So 2 people have said WhatsApp because that's gone bigger. So a popular answer will get bigger as we use them. Go to that on my phone as well. So we've now got WhatsApp as being the most popular here.
You can only put one, can't you, Laura?
I thought it said to say more.
Because Instagram perhaps might have been my close second.
Put my answer in. We've got 5 people. Instagram's on there, yep. So my code is 2. So we've only got 3 apps over 6 responses. So obviously they're quite popular. Well, what apps do I use? And I spelt WhatsApp wrong, so it came up as a separate one. Fitbit, right, brilliant. And the camera, you sort of forget the camera is an app, don't you?
Yeah, actually, that's probably a close one for me as well.
Yeah, so we've got a few different responses there. So if I can go back to my other screen, we can see there that WhatsApp was the most popular answer. So flicking between these screens it's not as easy as I made it look that easy in the rehearsal bit, didn't I?
Oh, here we go. Yeah, that's it. It's back on the screen. Back here on the screen.
So in terms of discussing those, what do people want to tell us of how they use WhatsApp? Do you use it for video call? Do you use it for sending pictures? Why would you use it socially? Would you use it professionally? Would anyone want to expand on how they use those?
I use it professionally and personally as well. It's free for sending photographs, isn't it? That's one of its real bonuses, isn't it? So, but it's also over the pandemic. It's been good for helping people fill out application forms because we've been able to have them actually hold the phone, so we can, when they're on the computer, we can kind of guide them through using it like as a camera, if you will.
Yeah, so it's kind of being like a multifunctional app, really, isn't it? Like camera, sending pictures. I mean, I've used it most with video calls because things like my mum's really not tech savvy. She really can't get on with things like Zoom, whereas WhatsApp's just on a phone and you just press call, like a video call, the same. So she's finding it much easier to do the video calls. Would anyone else like to sort of talk about their popular app or why they use it or how they use it?
Just WhatsApp, I think, has been invaluable for all the different family groups and friend groups over lockdown, so everyone can just stay in touch really quickly. And now we're out of lockdown, it's back to it being used to organise all the kids' football, swimming, needing to know where everybody's got to be when. It's just something so instant that, you know, we can organise our lives with.
Exactly. I think that's a really good point, isn't it? That it's instant and that it's group communication as well. So you can support groups of people, not just one. I mean, what did we used to do before that? Phone calls, that'd be quite a task to get hold of all those people at once, wouldn't it? Whereas it's just so instant. So fab. Anyone else want to make any other points on this? I can't see the chat panel from here.
I use a lot of Facebook for live streaming and, publicizing. Actually, I found it very helpful to publicize most of the things that we do in the charity here, and use it also to chat with people. The story, I use Facebook story a lot. It's easier than even writing text. Once you put a picture or your workshop flyers on the story, lots of people view it and reshare it quickly. So I find it an invaluable source of publicity, cheap publicity for the work that we do.
It's a really good point, isn't it? That you can share it with people not in the group on Facebook, whereas WhatsApp's more confined to that group, isn't it? So that's a really good point. I thought that Facebook might come up a bit stronger actually than WhatsApp on there. So yeah. We are going to come back to these sort of how we use these apps in an activity in a few moments. But for now, I'll just hand back over to Aniela to sort of define what we mean by the essential digital skills standards.
Yeah, so the essential digital skills standards. So, and I think we're going to just talk about the difference between the standards and the framework. But so the essential digital skills standards were published last year by the government, but the work that went into creating those standards was done kind of long before that, and I'm sure actually some of you were actually even part of that consultation prior to that. But the kind of the difference really with the standards are they set out the skills, digital skills that are needed for people at work and life, at foundation, entry level 3, and all the other entry levels, and level 1. But I think the key thing to remember with the standards that they were designed by the Department for Education for awarding bodies. So the standards are there for awarding bodies to design qualifications for essential digital skills. And that's kind of the main difference between the standards and the framework. But the framework came first, and the framework's probably the thing that you're most familiar with. So the Essential Digital Skills Framework was around, well, it's been around for over 5 years. And that really originally came out of some work that Lloyds Banking Group did. As they've been a big kind of, they've been in this space for quite a while, and it linked in with the essential, the skills index that they run every year, which is looking across the country to look at actually where we are in terms of skills levels with essential digital skills, but also the kind of needs and how they're being used across life and also employers. So the framework is really designed for everybody. So it's designed for us at Good Things Foundation when thinking about designing content for Learn My Way. It's designed for employers to think about essential digital skills and the framework and how they use it in the workplace. So the framework is definitely more a user-friendly version, but basically the standards came out from the framework. And for some of those, I think some of you might have been involved, but we were very heavily involved in both the design of the Essential Digital Skills Framework back in 2018. And that was originally, again, Tech Partnership and Lloyds Banking Group that did that. But we did a lot of work basically influencing how that looks. And I think one of the biggest things from the framework that we suggested was that foundation skills in particular were not left out, because there was always the danger with this that, you go to the higher level skills that people need. But what we were saying, and from our experiences of working with you, is that actually some people can't even turn a computer on. They can't turn a laptop on. They can't get to the app. So there's no point in training them on the app because you can't get to the app. They don't know how to change their screen resolution on their phone, or they don't know how to set their accessibility features. And they just don't know how to turn it on and off. So we heavily kind of influence that whatever happened within the framework, we mustn't forget those foundation skills that you have to have that are essential to enable people to go on. So that's just a bit of background, and some of you might be involved in that consultation. But the main difference is those standards are for awarding bodies. They're designed for designing qualifications, and it's basically taking what the framework is and providing those standards for accredited learning. So we will be talking a bit about both. This isn't all just about essential digital skills standards and qualifications. This is about, you know, how are we delivering overall essential digital skills so that people can basically do the things like we've just talked about, WhatsApping, keeping in touch with friends. So that's just a bit of background around the essential digital skills. And hopefully you're all familiar with the essential digital skills standards that came out of the framework. But there are 5 strands, and we've got the foundation skills at the heart of that, which again, I keep going on about this, but this is because of the work with you that we did. This infographic almost came from all the stuff that you'd said back when we did the consultation in 2018. So basically, yeah, there's 5 strands to it. And under each strand, so handling, I'm afraid I won't read it out, you can see it on the screen, but under each strand, there's then a set of statements under each of those areas, and Laura will touch a bit more about how the qualifications work, but basically a number of statements, and what they've done at the standards level is start to look at, well, they've looked at those statements, basically what are the task actions that you need to be able to demonstrate within those different strands of the essential digital skills, and then they've looked at how does that relate to levels. You know, what would be classed as an entry-level skill be a level 1 skill, and Laura can talk a bit more about that. And then I think the important part of that is that the kind of the final, the 5th strand, which is the safe, legal and confident online user, is the biggest part of all of this, and you'll know from your experience, as you know, even getting someone to use Facebook or WhatsApp, there are massive safety implications and things that people need to consider. I'm going to pause there first because I want to check with it. Who actually is currently using the essential digital skills framework within their kind of day-to-day running of your organisation and the delivery of your digital skills work? Is anybody currently like actually using this as a framework and something that they use to develop their learning programs using? Just a quick yes or no in the chat panel.
We were using it. I think we were before lockdown. We were starting to kind of get using this as a basis, I think. But then we obviously since lockdown, everything's gone a bit sideways, hasn't it? So.
And do you think that part of going, it's like the lockdown is because it's just that need to be so responsive, that actually having that formality and basing programs around a framework has become just more, it's like we have to do what we have to do.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, it's kind of just been put to the side slightly, hasn't it?
Yeah, no, that's fine, and I kind of get why that would happen. Anybody else, anybody using it currently? Or is it something that was a bit of a fad back in 2 years ago, and now it's kind of, and this is a totally honest conversation, you know, is it something now that you actually just do the stuff that you, is it more of a learner, user reactive thing that you do, and you design that learning based on the needs of the learner rather than a framework?
I'm not entirely sure you can say it's a conscious decision to use it.
Yeah.
It just happens, but there's no,
yeah.
Oh, today we're going to do problem solving and
yeah.
we'll do this little bit of learning, and that's transacting.
Yeah.
It is what it is. If it's covered, it's covered. If it isn't,
yeah.
it's just not going to stop us.
Yeah.
Yeah, we use elements of it in all of our training because a lot of the people who come into the library are coming to us for practical reasons.
Yeah.
So we'll teach them, say, how to use the email and things, but then show them how to do it actually in real life settings. So I think there's a lot of this that's being brought into this essential digital skills, but we've been doing that anyway because it's pointless somebody learning the theory of something without knowing how to use it in real life. So that's been the basis of basically everything that we've been providing in the library.
Yeah, that's interesting. And that's, I suppose, the difference, the big difference again between the framework and the standards is that actually the standards is about then assessing that learning, that application of that someone can actually do the things that they need to do.
Even when we did the City and Guilds qualification with you, a lot of that was a mix of using the online Learn My Way site and then putting it into practical use. So then they were making their own emails and sending things out to people or applying for jobs and just showing how it was all used. So it was always that way, because otherwise it would have been pointless, really.
Yeah.
You know, there's a qualification and okay, I understand the theory, but actually I'm no further forward in how to use it.
I think that's a really valid point, and I think that's definitely, and Laura will talk a bit more about this, and we've got a session actually on Learn My Way and how it has all been mapped to the framework and the standards. But I think that's the assessment bit. You know, Learn My Way will go so far, but you want to demonstrate is that application, it's can that learner can actually do those things that they need to do. And I think perhaps you all are consciously just doing it because you fed into this so much. So, you know, this is just the stuff that probably you've been doing for years and years, and it's just being formalized. And I think the thing to say with the framework in particular, it's there as a guide. It's not you follow every bit, and it's there for people to refer to. But it's not there for you to follow like to every word. It's there as a guide. And particularly for organisations new to starting to think about essential digital skills and what you might teach. So I'm sure if you want to refresh yourself, we'll send out links to all these afterwards, so you've got the documents if you just want to go back and have that refresher. So I'm just going to go back to Laura, and she's going to quickly talk to you about why go back to the app conversation.
So I think really we wanted to think about how much essential digital skills are just embedded in what we do, and we kind of take them for granted, that we need them to be included in normal everyday life. Like we said, the social aspects of the WhatsApp groups, or the delivering information to people from centres through Facebook, whatever it is. And we often don't really think about how many skills we've built up to be able to just do that and participate fully in the digital world. So thinking back to what essential digital skills were needed to use the apps, we said, so we kind of said Facebook Messenger and WhatsApp were our main ones. So I just wanted to have a couple of minutes in a breakout room to have a look at the standards and think, well, how many of those do you have to be able to use WhatsApp or Messenger? So I will post a link to the standards. So hang on, as I get there, into the chat panel. So you may have already seen it a lot anyway, but there's the standards. And if we can open breakout rooms for just like 5 minutes, maybe introduce yourself, say what centre you're from, and think about what essential digital skills, how many could you count that you need to use WhatsApp? Do you get what I mean? Are we clear on the task? Okay, I will open breakout rooms and let you have a little chat about this then. Hiya. Can you make it into a room then? I can't hear. Oh, you're muted at the moment. I can't hear what you're saying. There we go. You're unmuted. Hiya, how are you?
Okay.
So do you work at Learn for Life?
Yes. Well,
Yeah.
our organization is BYCS, but our email address is Learn for Life.
Yeah. So did you just get invited to a breakout room there?
Pardon?
Did you just get a note asking you to go to a breakout room?
I was asked, I didn't realize that how it is done. Would you be sending the printouts, I mean the copies of the slides?
Yeah, we will send the copies of the slides, yeah, to everybody. So I don't know if I can, I don't know how to ask you to go to the, I think you should have seen a message to say go to a breakout room.
Yeah, there is a message.
Yeah, if you just click on that.
You to join the breakout room to then join. Should I click join?
Yeah, click that and then you'll go into the discussion group.
So that went really quick. I don't know if anyone else felt like that, but that just went too quick. Didn't it? I didn't really get a chance to get around everyone, so I apologise about that. One thing, Laura, we noticed that what I grasped from what we did say is that depends on the individual and what kind of what skills are needed to get them to use the app. But I think the biggest thing that came across for me was also the just general support that you have to, that's not skills related, but it's more the individual needs of depending on who the learner is and if they have language English isn't their first language, or they're older people, so they're really scared of the technology, and they before you even get them onto the app, you've got to help them learn how to just be safe touching the app, whether it's a phone or. So I think what became apparent to me is this isn't just about skills. This is that wrap around extra soft, nice, get to know your learners that no framework or standards are actually gonna, tell you. But sorry, Laura, you're on mute.
At least once a session. So yeah, the soft skills before we even get to the skills is part of the massive work of the online centres, isn't it? Which is a huge amount of work. But I don't know, was it Lynn who was talking in our group? I don't know, Lynn, if you want to sort of reiterate what was said in our group about the amount of skills you need before you even get to the app.
It was Jackie that was talking, but...
Oh, sorry, it was Jackie.
Jackie, are you going to do it, or...? She's gone quiet.
She's gone quiet.
I'm here. Hello.
Hi.
Well, we were both sort of like just pointing out that even before you even get started, you've got to have your internet connection, or you've got to know where you can access it from. If you're on your mobile phone, you've got to think about your data, because a lot of our customers have limits on their data, so they can't use that. And I know WhatsApp's a free app, but it will still use up some information that's there. And if they're only spending £5 or something, then that's an issue. We were talking about just even just the idea that the language, and Paul mentioned uploading, downloading. They don't know about this, so that there is a lot of discussion. As somebody else was mentioning, even before you can even start, because you've got to see each individual and where they are coming from before you can even start anything. And then it was John who was mentioning, well, if they haven't got an email, they can't do any of this anyway. Yes. So it's all very well saying you want to do WhatsApp, but you can't because you haven't got the emails and things like this, and it just balloons out. So you've got to find the right starting point, otherwise you knock everybody's confidence.
Yeah, so I think, we've really demonstrated how many of these skills we just take for granted and all the steps that are needed. It's actually quite a lot of work, quite a lot of education just to use something like WhatsApp, isn't it? So I think that sort of shows us how important it is to embed these skills, but it's not easy and it's not simple, is it, with it at all?
And also, just before you move on, Laura, the foundation skills, because actually when we talk a bit about funding in a minute and the qualifications that we could talk about now, foundation skills aren't fundable and they're not part of the qualification. But yet, from that conversation, they're such a crucial part of that journey for most individuals, and they're not kind of, they're not part of the funding world or the standards. So it's just an interesting thing that I'm going to look into.
I think it's assumed a lot of the foundation skills, and that's just a wrong assumption to assume people have got them, isn't it? I assume a lot of you would agree with that.
Mm.
So, moving on from what essential digital skills are then, we just wanted to say a bit about the essential digital skills qualifications. So these are new qualifications and they can be gained at entry level and level 1. Often entry levels being referred to as skills for life and level 1's being referred to as skills for work, but it's not really as clear cut as that. There is a lot of overlap between them, but particularly in the framework they're referred to with examples in those realms. There are now 7 organisations that have been approved by Ofqual to deliver the essential digital skills qualifications, and you can see the list of them on the screen there. So Gateway Qualifications, you might be aware, was approved by Ofqual a considerable time before anybody else. So they kind of ended up becoming the market leaders in gaining a lot of sign up from organisations to deliver their qualification, because they were about 4 or 5 months ahead of anyone else being passed. So they were the only provider for quite a long time. We've worked with them quite a lot in sort of looking at support materials and assessment types, and they are guest speakers later on in our series to present more about their qualification. We've also worked with the Learning Machine, and I think a good addition that they've had to their qualification offer is that they're also having an initial assessment tool that's available to see sort of where someone should be, whether it's entry level or level 1, or what their particular strengths and weaknesses would be around the standards. That's quite useful. And again, they're coming to speak next week in one of these sessions as well to tell you more about that. We also work quite closely with OCN London, looking at how to make the assessments practical and applicable to real life situations to try and make them real for people. And then there's also 4 other organisations that are now passed by Ofqual to deliver those qualifications. So the qualifications themselves all look quite similar because they're all very much based around the standards. So they've all got those 5 strands of work in their syllabuses between them. They're all about 50 guided learning hours, and they all involve some kind of examination or controlled assessment. They're all online examinations that you can take, and some of them have also got tutor monitored sort of portfolios of evidence work with them as well. They all take a blended learning approach, so all of them have been designed mindfully of the fact that people are going to be delivering remotely as well as face-to-face, and that some of it's going to be offline as well as online, as well as practical application of it in real life as there as well. So I don't know if anyone's got any particular questions they wanted to ask around this area of the qualifications at the moment.
Why is level 1 being designated skills for work when the skills probably will be for lots of things other than just work? And why is entry level? I'm a bit. Why label it skills for work when it will cover loads of stuff?
It is really arbitrary, isn't it? Because there's massive overlap with the life and work, and there's lots of different types of work which you would need different skills for. So it does feel quite arbitrary, Paul. I agree with you on that one.
I'm just thinking for even those who don't work, who are retired, why wouldn't they want to do a level one and cover the stuff in there?
I mean, you're
Got a
totally right.
specific-
I don't know if anybody else wants to comment on that, but I think Paul's right and haven't got an answer, because
Just
I
wondering,
think that
have they
the
got
entry
a
level 3 was
exam?
kind of skills for work, wasn't it? That was kind of all the basic skills you needed to do, maybe work in a factory where you have to run a scanner or run a machine, something like that, you know, log stuff on a computer when you're taking stock out and stuff like that.
I mean, I've just flicked back to this one because we can see OCN London and BCS have only been passed by Ofqual for one section of it. So
Yeah.
OCN just for the entry level and BSc just for the level 1. So they are quite strictly defined by Ofqual as different.
Are they particularly aiming at an age group? You know, from a certain age group? It just seems there's a lot of colleges and things in here that's interested in the delivery. So it looks like there's something where it's like targeted learning for, I don't know, younger people. Is there something about that? Is there?
Possibly. I mean, I think we've got 2 awarding bodies coming to chat at future sessions, and I think these are some of the questions we'll take and prepare them for, because I suppose what's quite interesting is, what do the assessments look like for level 1? You know, are the assessments really kind of based around skills based, you know, being in a workplace? Because actually any adult can do these qualifications, whether they're in work or they're not in work. They can do the level 1 if they choose, if they want to. But I think it'd be interesting to get the awarding bodies' take on this very, and some of this is obviously very much policy driven. So Jackie, in answer to your question, I don't know. Is it to drive, you know, is it about employability? You know, we saw what's going on, particularly at a policy level at the moment. It is very much about employment related skills and qualifications and preparing for the workplace. So it's a very good question.
And I think part of today, because it's an introductory session, is taking these questions so we can inform the sessions later on, and we'll tell you what those sessions are. And a lot of the things we'll ask you in a few minutes about informing how can we make the sessions and the guest speakers target what you want to know. But I think that age thing brings us into this definition that Aniela's going to talk through here about what the government policy is.
Because the policy has changed a lot on this over the last couple of years. And I know actually something, so obviously maths and English up to level 2 has always been funded for adults over 19. Anyone who demonstrates that they have a need, they don't have all the skills up to level 2, could get fully funded qualifications. And recently, it was just last year, wasn't it, where the entitlement came in for learners 16 and above, who again don't have any or low digital skills, to actually take the essential digital skills qualification up to level 1, and that can be funded. So adults can now access funding to do this qualification, and it doesn't matter about their age, like as long as they're 16 and over, it doesn't matter, as long as they show an evidence through initial assessment that they are not at level 1 in these skills areas, these standard areas, then they are entitled, probably through the colleges who are drawing down the funding, to do a funded qualification. So I think it's an interesting question. We'll take that back to the awarding body, because they obviously have worked very closely with Ofqual and the Department for Education on designing these qualifications. But it is a good thing that now essential digital skills is seen as important as English and maths for adults. So that is a good thing. In terms of the funding that's available for this, in terms of the entitlement, so the funding, this is not new money. So they are not putting new money into funding essential digital skills. But what is available is that funding through the adult education budget can now be used to fund essential digital skills qualifications. So it's not new money. And obviously you have to be, in order to access the AEB funding, you need to be a provider or a subcontractor working with somebody who does access the adult education budget. And there is £300 available in funding for the qualification, for the entry level 3 qualification, and also for the level 1 qualification. So you know, you could do the entry levels 3, get £300, and then someone might then go on and do the the level 1, and there's £300 available for that. The other big thing that's happened in the kind of funding and policy landscape, so there's massive reviews going on at the moment looking at funding for qualifications, and there was the recent skills white paper, which is actually having more of a focus on more technical skills and qualifications at higher levels. But one of the other things that will be happening over the next year or so is that ICT qualifications that were previously funded, ITQs, things like that, up to level 1, will no longer be funded through the AEB budget. The only IT qualification up to level 1 that will be funded will be the essential digital skills qualifications. Some of them some funding's been withdrawn this August, and then other quals are being withdrawn next year. So essential digital skills is now, from a government point of view, the qualification up to level 1 that's really going to be the most important, the only one that they'll fund. We are doing a session later on funding, and we've got an expert coming who is going to talk to us about the adult education budget, and also because the other big thing around this is because accessing the adult education budget is pretty hard, isn't it? Unless you are...
I know from my own personal, I mean, we're registered on DPS. I mean, you've got to get past loads of verifications. It'll exclude loads of groups. Well, this is...
It is, and I think what's become more apparent to me, I should have had this light bulb moment, is all that stuff we talked about before about the foundation skills, the stuff that even gets them ready to do a entry 3 or level 1, isn't funded. That's not a funded part of this. But the AEB is very difficult to either become
it's a massive government chest, that procurement, and it's... I mean, I'm on it for some other stuff with DWP now, but it's not easy. Is this something what good things are thinking on maybe being an umbrella for or something?
Well, John, we're not ruling anything out, but it's very, like you said, it's very difficult. So even for us, it's really difficult. So for smaller organisations, it's even harder. And then the other thing that comes with all this is all the Ofsted, requirements and that side of it. But I suppose I don't want to. I think because we need to talk about challenges. We've got a session. We'll have 5 minutes at least on that, because I think in fact we're running out of time, aren't we? But we'll get. But I think the one thing I'd say is that we've got something to. But the other thing to think about is through the skills white paper that came out earlier this year. It's becoming more kind of employer focused. The focus is on what are employers needing at a local level, and I think a lot more responsibility is going to go to a local level. And even from an AEB budget funding point of view, it depends if your local area think that digital skills are a priority, because that's, if it's not new money in the adult education budget, they're only going to spend it on essential digital skills if they think it's a priority for your local area. So one of the other sessions we're doing is around partnership building at a local level, and particularly thinking about those partnerships with the further education sector and that side of it, because let's be honest, they're the ones at the moment that access that budget. But I think this brings us nicely onto our next activity, and I think this is probably the biggest thing is really, with the landscape changing, and those of you who've had FDI from us for years on end, this is real now, isn't it?
Before we go to that, is there an almost more fundamental question that is not question about the EDS or anything, but what is the online centre's positioning? What are they? What is their role anymore then? Where are they seeing themselves? Where is this network seeing itself? Is it as a deliverer of qualifications, or is it as community-focused centres that deliver what people who come through there want to do?
I think that is part of what this series, we're trying to sort of get more information, discover and inform on that, I think, Aniela, really, aren't we? Because there's massive questions there, Paul, isn't there? And
because the network can't just suddenly morph into a deliverer of qualifications network. It's never going to do it.
No, so this series we are thinking about what upskilling do we need in that network to support what the roles are, how many network centres are going to be able to deliver qualifications, and what are the roles of the others around that is something we're really trying to understand here. I don't know if you want to expand on that, Aniela.
Yeah, I agree. I think, Paul, thanks for that question, because I think that's a really important one. And I think, so this part of this series is to explore the opportunities for qualifications. But also what I think is a good question, where do we sit in this landscape, and how do we influence future policy? And let's be honest, the big thing it's always going to come down to is funding, isn't it? Who's going to fund these different activities? So I think, yeah, I agree. I think it's where we are. But what I'd quite like to know is, because there could be opportunities through this that we, you know, there could be opportunities for partnerships that you've never thought about. You know, we've got a lot of other. We're not as an organisation now. We're not just thinking governments are funding like route, because it's just not realistic anymore, is it? So, you know, there's a lot of other people and organisations interested in essential digital skills, because actually, in a way, the pandemic's really brought it to the kind of forefront because of, well, we've all been communicating for the last 12 months using technology. So I think this slide, I'm conscious of time, as with all these things, that but what I'd really like to know is, so we can, Paul, answer that question for you, is if you can all go onto the Slido, some of you are already doing it, but what are the challenges for you in this new landscape? Like, you know, what is it that is it? And if it's funding, also, can we have a bit more specific? Is there any specifics in terms of, like, are old funding routes not valid anymore, or what's you know, yeah, so any kind of specifics you've got, but what are the challenges? And we've talked about delivering quals. Well, John said it's a plumbing nightmare.
I will just say, I know we're getting really short on time, but these polls will stay open for you to add more to after the session. And we're going to use the information that comes in on these polls to sort of try and inform the rest of the series as much as we can. So finances and funding is coming out as a big one here, really, isn't it? As a strong theme going throughout, access to the budget. But it's also interested about qualified staff and what Ofsted will want in terms of qualified and quality assurance delivery. Yeah.
And do you, just on the funding note, what have you seen? So outside of FDI funding, not have you seen changes in other parts of where you would get funding for essential digital skills activity you do in your organisation?
Can I come in on this one?
Yes, please do, Anthony. Yeah.
We actually specialise in social groups with people with learning difficulties, for all sorts and sorts of reasons. And digital inclusion is so important for these guys, apart from service, self-confidence, getting out of themselves, communicating. We do not, and we have not in the past 8 years, received a penny funding for our work on digital inclusion. When we apply for it, we're right at the very edge, because we're not specific in anything at all, really, except in bringing these people into life, and it's men and women. And because we live in a very difficult area, people look at it and say, oh, if we invest in that area, it's a waste of money. So we face all sorts of difficulty in that. And I think probably it's headed up that we don't specialize. Probably it's that we generalize in our assistance of people.
So
very difficult, that one. Very difficult.
Because actually a lot of the funding that you're looking at will be for either specific groups, specific activity.
That's right.
And it's
that's
not,
right.
And actually the funding that used to be there, which was more for just general community engagement, is now
it's all targeted areas, is it now more?
Targeted areas.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
And if you don't fit that criteria, you might do part of that targeted area. If it's not your full remit, you kind of miss out. So sometimes you can like the Lloyd's one. It covers about 7 different things. We do some with everyone. but we don't do one specific, so we're not really eligible. And it's kind of annoying, really.
Yeah, that's that. Yeah, we're exactly the same. You're marginalised in that thing, and it's so essential because I do believe this is I think digital skills for work. Each company has, and I think it's already been approached. Usually have their own systems, be it CNC, be it accounting systems or whatever. And if you know how to use a keyboard, you've got to learn at work. Invariably, management information systems are changing every 5 years. People are updating their skills. So bringing somebody into that without it is very, very difficult. It's a matter of learning how to switch a computer on, really, I suppose, for work at the moment.
So what I'm going to do now, I'm going to turn it another way, right? So I'm going to take Paul's kind of like big question and the challenges that we've just talked about and the various. Laura, I was going to go back to your opportunity slide, right? Because if we could go back just quickly to that opportunity slide, what would be then? So I suppose thinking about where we are there opportunities or are there ways that you think you would like to see Good Things Foundation like help or within this space? Like what could we do? What are there opportunities that you think are out there, but you need our help to make those opportunities happen? So I'm going to ask you to pop them on the slide out. If anyone wants to share, because I can see Paul's mind is ticking over there.
I'm just saying, in the dim past, there was an idea. I can't for life remember when it was, but it was the idea that Good Things would be, and I think it's been mentioned today, you guys would be the accredited, the intermediary between the awarding bodies, the qualifications, and those guys.
Right.
And you looked after, you know us, you look after us anyway, so you know we operate all of that. And by furnishing you with just a little bit extra, you can say to the big guys, yes, they've got all the things in place, the admin, the staff, the this, that, they can deliver these qualifications.
Okay.
So it's that, I mean, heaven forbid the thought of going through the whole rigmarole of Ofsted or anything like that is horrifying.
Horrifying.
And it's just, well, I'll tell you for now, it ain't going to happen here. It just will not be happening.
Okay, that's a good. This I'm gonna go. Who thinks that they would want to deliver the qualifications? Anyone want to deliver the qualifications?
Yeah, we do, because we're definitely looking at it already, but it's...
We'd have to rebook his test.
I was hoping you were going to give me, we're applying for the funding.
What the process in terms of
I'm going to put that, we'll put that on as the opportunity. The opportunity is not just for your centre, but for Good Things that we become. So basically what you're saying is we become the prime
That's what you did.
And that we subcontract.
That's what you did for the City and Guilds.
Yeah.
It was something like the voucher scheme or something. We had to buy vouchers and then we could deliver the course, but certification.
No, I mean, it's too late to amend it on the day that it's due to do it.
Sorry, I can't. There's some background.
I know, I can't quite decide who that is to ask.
Jackie, was that you, Jackie?
No, I don't think so. No.
Okay.
Who just talked about the online basics qualification?
I did. I mentioned it because we delivered that so you could get the entry level one, and it was a link to where you got 1 credit.
Yeah. So there's 2 things there. There's with the City and Guilds online basics, we that was purely us being the kind of the prime recognised centre with City and Guilds, and then when we had satellite centres through yourselves, that was to deliver the quals. So what I'm hearing is you kind of would prefer a route like that for quals delivery, where we do something similar. And are we talking about the same with funding? Because is that the other thing that's coming through here, that you're saying the AEB budget's probably not in your, it's just not in the grasp for you to be able to become an AEB funded centre. But is that also something that you're suggesting there, Paul? Have I just...
Yeah, I mean, so I think it's certainly not in the grasp of a lot of centres, and the things that you have to go through, maintenance, some of it is financially prohibitive because it ain't cheap. And there's all the administration, there's all the staff training, there's just a whole raft of things.
Yeah.
But the other option, if it's not good things, is you could potentially have centres that do this, that can do it and have all the accreditation, and they have secondary satellite online centres that they work with. Okay. So if there's a big old centre that can do that, and it's an online centre, smaller ones can work with them, and they can help the smaller centres not necessarily do the delivery, but run the qualification.
That's very much like that one you can see on the screen now that we've got lined up in June, which is the only one we've not got a date for yet. Looking at that, how do we build partnerships between centres to do that model that you're just describing there, Paul?
Yeah, it's going to be a tricky one because the partnership's got to be realistic in terms of money. It's got to be in terms of who does what. There's the quality aspect. There's all the equality and diversity. There's a whole raft of stuff, but you know, there's a real danger of having a multi-tiered online centres network, which would be dreadful. You'll have, you know, at the moment the network is level. Everyone does everything for the communities in one way or the other. The core value is it's the community driven. What would be dreadful is if you have tiers. Oh, we're up here because we can deliver qualifications. You guys can't.
Yeah.
You change the whole dynamic of what's been around for decades.
Really good point to consider, that like danger point of that.
It will be like the Premier League and the League Two, won't
Oh,
it?
don't start.
Or even the one that nearly happened last, the European.
Yeah, exactly. No, it is.
Okay. Do you know what? It's probably the session's not quite turned out as Laura's probably thinking. God, shut up, Aniel. It's not quite turned out quite as planned.
But we did want to sort of get what do you need from the rest of the series. So it kind of has turned out as planned because we've got lots of ideas of what we need to consider and discuss over the coming weeks. So this isn't exhaustive what's on the screen now of what's coming up, in terms of there are other webinars similar, like best practice in remote delivery and things like that. And the full list is on the network training website, which I'll drop a link to that in the chat panel in a few minutes. But you can see that there are some dates coming up. Now, next week we've got the Learning Machine and Gateway Qualifications coming to talk to us on the 11th and 12th about their qualification and becoming a provider of their qualification. Access to funding, I think, is going to be a really interesting and important one the week after that, about the adult education budget and the regional differences within that. Then we've got how we can use resources to support it. The quality experience, we've got another guest speaker coming in to talk about that sort of Ofsted quality assurance hoops that you have to jump through. And then this community partner one, I think, will be a really interesting one, like Paul's just been saying, of how does that work if there are sort of super or umbrella centres delivering the qualification, or how you can link with FE colleges. And I can't remember who it was.
FE colleges scare me to death.
Yeah.
Do you know what, Paul? Sorry, I'm just going to talk again, but I think one of the big things is, so these quals are pretty new, and obviously the pandemic hit just as they were launching them, and from, you know, I think it primarily is the private training companies and the FE sector that's delivering them, and I think they're struggling because of what we talked about right at the beginning, which is these people come in, we have to get to know them. It's about all those foundation skills before you get them onto any of the qual stuff. Bearing in mind they're getting £300 per learner, but all the stuff that happens before is not paid for. You know what I mean? Like, so I think the partnerships one's key, because from what I see, the opportunity, you know, all the stuff you've been saying, Paul, about us being community driven, is actually we've got a real strength here, is that we engage the people that need these skills. We can help them to do the qualifications and help them through the learning because they trust us, they come to you, they know you. Like, and this is where we can add the value, but how do we then broker that relationship and have a really great working relationship with those organisations who are getting the money? Do you know what I mean? And where is there a way for us to kind of start to develop those? Because in a way, just, you know, they do need organisations like yourself, because they just don't have the expertise, the skills. The people don't want to go to a college to do their qualification. And why should they come to you, do that initial bit of learning, you engage them, you build that relationship, and then off you go and do your college, because they probably won't do it. So I think
that works if you've trained them up from the beginning, and that's a progression for them, isn't it? That's where you want them to progress to, isn't it? That's the whole idea, isn't it?
Yeah.
But a lot of them won't even get into college because they won't pass the initial assessment anyway. So
exactly.
So there should be something
I know
where
in
those-
Manchester the waiting list of college is massive. It's huge. It's years.
So there needs to be somewhere where these people can be picked up. If they can't pass the initial assessment, who's then going to pick them up? The colleges and people won't be interested because they'll need to spend too much time on them.
I was going to say that the guided learning hours of 50 is unrealistic when you bring all that in, and that's an issue for them as well. Because it's almost like a half qualification, and they need to fund it, so there's that whole issue as well. So
why just because someone's not got through an initial assessment should that stop them from carry on some learning?
There's a lot of questions around it.
There's an awful lot of questions.
There's a lot of questions, and I'm going to be quiet now because I know Laura's thinking we're over time. What I would say is we've got a lot to go and think about to help shape some of the future sessions that are going to happen, and I think what I did, because you've all got quite a bit to say on it, and it's all valid, and it's all really kind of posing some good questions for us as an organisation. Is any other thoughts? Can you just send them through to me or Laura on this whole thing? Any crazy ideas that you have if you go away today and go, do you know what would be we should pitch this would work, this is good, we'd love to hear from you. And also just any more specifics, so any specifics on funding that you want to know about the qual stuff. So we've got those 2 awarding bodies, anything that we can give them beforehand, so they answer your questions, and send those through to us.